So this time I'm going to talk about Chiron. And if you can't tell, I've been studying, well, almost all day, about this strange little planet that is a big deal, but is not a big deal. And that a lot of people just don't understand its purpose in the chart. But boy, oh boy, when Chiron hits, it does. So most astrologers call Chiron the wounded healer. And if you want to know more about this planet and its mythology, go and do a web search, Chiron mythology. Anyhow, so Chiron is the wounded healer. To me, because I work with traumatized people, Chiron is not a wounded healer only. I like to change that language to Chiron is the mentor maker. Chiron, as the wounded healer, really actually means all the shit you've been through that you learned from, survived, mastered, and now you can mentor other people using that energy. For me, the way that relates, that comes out, interprets, is I went through a lot from the time I became a legal adult up until about 4 years ago in one area of my life, and then a few months ago in the other one. And what I have learned from those two times in my life is that through Chiron and his story, and what I know about, well, first of all, being somebody else's victim, let's just go there, is that the moment that you are willing to no longer be a victim of the circumstances of your life is when Chiron in your chart is activated. So when I was Pow, not so much getting over myself, that's kind of it's a hurtful thing to say to people if it doesn't apply, and it certainly doesn't apply to people who've been through significant abuse for the better part of their life. Okay. And so for a very long time, because of everybody who I watched in my own family in regards to relationship, they never really said anything. They just kind of lived their lives, never explaining anything. And when you have that example, you kind of expect that if you're learning from that, that's the way to do it, right? So I really rarely ever saw my mom and dad fight in front of me, but I always saw my auntie and uncle arguing like hell in front of all of us. And as a little kid, there were times it really alarmed me. It scared the shit out of me sometimes. Fast forward to early 20s, and there I was in that same predicament where this person is fighting like hell with me, but all I have is the main lesson, the more comfortable lesson, was my own parents, where instead of arguing in front of us, they would take it behind closed doors, which that's what you're supposed to do. On the other side of that is my auntie and uncle who never did that. Okay, so for me, that's a mixed message. And in that energy, the Chiron lesson for me was that balance. And unfortunately for me, the balance that I needed from both of those two examples caused it that I would have to go through the uglier part of it, and that the not so ugly part of it was absolutely behind closed doors. So when you come from that example and then you end up living what is the same but very different, Chiron becomes activated. Chiron becomes the teacher in your life, because you need a teacher before you become one of those yourself. And that lesson took me the majority of my adult life to learn. Sometimes these lessons brought on by Chiron are never ending. And it's not because of anything other than that. We have all these different choices, yeah? But based on the examples we've been brought up with, we're not sure which one is the right one. You know, people are very good at saying, choose the one that feels good. Well, who the hell not going to choose the one that feels good? Right? But in my case, I had both of those thrown at me. And one was real, and it didn't feel good. And the other one was just for show. So my Chiron lesson, for me, based on what that planet is, that sign and the planet, all that kind, that it's next to. The lesson for me was not just, you're going to put up with that, but also, is this what it's supposed to look like? And when you are a POW surviving this, what can you tell other people? What can you say to anybody else who, if you're just in a crowded place and you see this happening, and one of those two people, the victim in that situation, comes to you and says, help me, what can you tell them? And I learned very well exactly what to tell them, to the point where here I am doing this, teaching people not only about this chart and what is everything in that chart and what all those planets and signs mean and how they work together, but what you can do with all of that stuff that is in your own chart and how that applies to all the things you're going through. Chiron, as the wounded healer, if you go and look for, that myth, that story online, you're going to find out that there's this centaur named Chiron who was wounded, and then the wound never healed. So instead of, the hero dies, he's brought back, but the wound never heals. And in that case, the wound that is never going to heal for me, which is fine. I don't want it to, completely heal, whatever that means. The one that will never heal for me is the one that I can't undo. The things that other people have done to me. From that, it could either be mine to continue on, dying in my Chiron stance, getting shot, wounded, and never recover, or I can take that wound and I can go tell people, hey, you know what you can do? Trick them. You don't have to deal with that. I know it's hard. You're going to go back and forth a couple times, but there will be one time when you actually leave and you don't go back. It's at that moment that portion of all that kind of bullshit where Chiron is activated. When you make that choice, when you are leaving that situation and thinking about how scared you are, constantly looking over your shoulder, but always knowing that you don't have to look backwards, even though you're looking over your shoulder. You can look ahead, while being cautious still, while watching your own okole. So Chiron in the chart, even though it is true that you're the wounded healer, it's so overused. What you are actually doing is making your mentor. And the first person you go mentor is yourself. And everything you learn from those times in your life when Chiron is activated are the times where your mentor is learning, where you're going through this learning process that only you can teach yourself. Sure, you're going to have other people come into your life who will teach you, but it's what you do with it. That is actually, in my interpretation, what Chiron is all about. Okay, if you want to know more, send me a message, email me, put it in the comments. It's not, it's not something that you need to be worried about. People see those words, wounded healer, oh shit. If you look down at your legs and you go find one scar from when you was one small kid, what is the lesson? What is the story from that scar, that wound? Did you go back and do it again? Well, yeah, maybe. What if you're an extreme sports person? You go broke your leg. Does that stop you? No, you just figure out a way around it. And then when another guy goes and breaks their leg, you get to tell him, hey, brother, I've been right there. No worry, yeah. Go to this doctor, blah, 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 blah. Take this kind of medicine, then go work out like this. That is Chiron, the mentor, the wounded healer, the teacher. Okay? Okay. That's all I got to say today. Thank you for stopping by. Share, like, subscribe. Send me a message. Till next time. Aloha.